Existentialism. We know it from people like Camus, Sartre, and Nietzsche, and we know that it is one of the most practical and useful philosophies of our modern age. And it seems like the internet is obsessed with it, from finding meaning in a meaningless universe or building one's own purpose. It seems that it's the hot subject of the times. However, this is not exactly where existentialism started, and it particularly has its roots in a single Danish philosopher. And his work covers many subjects, but there is one that stands out in particular. One that some people say they experience shedding tears or feel an existential dread when they read it. That, my friends, is fear and trembling. But what causes such a reaction? And how can we discover what truly is faith in a deeper sense? Now, I believe this book, whether you're a Christian or not, will help you sharpen your senses as far as faith, rationality, and a certain balance in between them. Now, keep in mind, I myself am, or I consider myself to be, agnostic. So towards the end, I will critique some of his points, but that will come later. Real quick before we jump in the video, if you believe in great ideas and believe in sharing them, then I do hope you subscribe. As more subscribers I get, we can build this community, and I can get better at sharing great ideas, philosophy, history, and all the things up above. But yes, if you do, I do appreciate it. And drop some feedback, as I'm always trying to improve in this journey on YouTube. But nevertheless, let's get into it. Published in 1843 under the pseudonym Johannes de Silencio, Fear and Trembling is this lyrical, dialectical, and philosophical work with a hint of poetry mixed in the bit. It is written from the perspective of a non-believer and Hegelian. And that's mainly what he focuses on in this work, because at the time in Denmark, many of the intellectuals were followed Hegel and a lot of his thoughts, but they were also Christian at the same time. And to Kierkegaard, these two cannot live simultaneously in the same world. But before we do get into the rest of Fear and Trembling and Hegelian thought, I do want to kind of give you a little bit of a taste of who Kierkegaard is. Now, he is a type of person, and a lot of people would agree with me on this, that he is this type of philosopher with a poet's heart. A lot of his writing is very beautiful, and it's structured interestingly. It's abnormal to find such a person in such a type of style of writing in philosophy. And what makes it so interesting is it's a lot of sadness. There's a lot of moving parts, but mainly there's this type of sadness, this existential dread within his writing, but he almost has a humorous undertone to it. And Kierkegaard, unlike a lot of philosophers, does have an amazing sense of humor. But it's more than just his writing. Him in general, he is a very interesting character. For example, whenever he would publish a book, he would put a review in the newspaper under a pseudonym criticizing his own work. Now, if you can't get that interesting, then I don't know what to tell you. But that was just some of the things that you can look to or look forward to whenever you're reading someone as Kierkegaard. Where did this contention with Christianity and Hegelian thought break? Where did this come from? And you may be wondering, what exactly is the contention between these two thoughts and belief systems? So to get a perspective of exactly what these two contentions are between Hegelian and Christian thought, I want you to take a look at how Kierkegaard separates them. So in his philosophy, he believes that there's two ways that we can go with our thoughts. The first camp is the rationality, moral, the common sense morality that we know, and that would be the Athenian camp. And then on the other side, we have the Jerusalem camp, that being someone like Abraham, Job, someone of an absurd fate, as Kierkegaard would name it. So these two camps, we have reason versus faith. I hope I spelled faith right. But as you can see, we have these two camps here. And what Kierkegaard is pointing out to us, that we are right dead in the center of this. And it's not just us. It's also the entirety of Western culture. And what our choice is as a person, and what he points out in Fear and Trembling, excuse my stickman drawing because I know it's about to get bad. Yeah, that's not too bad. We'll put a smiley face on him, which he probably wouldn't be smiling. And we'll put a cone hat on him. But if we have our character here, we can see that there is two choices we have to make. We can take, and he also covers this in his book, either or, but we can take one of two choices. Number one, we can go to the camp of reason. We can follow what is common morality. We can follow what is ethical, reasonable, and rational. Or we can do what this entirety and this book is focused on. We can make the leap of faith, fully surrendering to God and fully surrendering our rationality and reason. We can make the leap of faith, fully surrendering to God and fully surrendering our rationality and reason, and be having what he terms as absurd faith. But what exactly is this absurd faith he is talking about? Now, before we do dive into Abraham and Genesis 22, which is the whole premise of this book, I want to talk about Hegelian thought. Now, I'm going to be upfront and honest. I'm not the best when it comes to Hegelian thought or Hegel in general. Because to me, it's just like, he is like reading about paint drying on a wall. He is so fucking boring. I do not know how else to put that. His books are always lengthy. They're extremely complicated. And it's just like, oh, I gotta read Hegel again. Oh my God. I mean, it is just terrible. And it's just like you'll be sitting there reading, okay? Oh, another page of Hegel. But then you'll get this one good quote or this one good idea from him. And it's just like, why couldn't you make this book? Like, why couldn't you just make this a book? Because this is just, oh my God, it's so awful. Excuse the rant. But what I wanted to focus on is I'm going to try to explain Hegel as simply as I possibly can. So, Hegel, and this is the part that Kierkegaard is targeting, Hegel believes that God comes at the end of time. So he kind of evolves with humanity throughout time. And that's why he says God comes at the end. So kind of like if we take the Old Testament and we compare it to the New Testament. If we compare the character of Yahweh from the Old Testament to the character of Jesus, their ethical and morals are much different, and they're almost polar opposites. We look at Yahweh, he seems very angry, very wrathful, not very forgiving. You have to abide by the laws. And then we move to Jesus, and he's completely different. Love thy neighbor, turn the other cheek. Very advanced for his morals compared to Yahweh. So that's why he kind of believes that God comes at the end of time, because he evolves with time. He evolves with mankind. But what is someone or something that, according to Kierkegaard, breaks down such a theory? Now, Genesis 22 is very short. It'd take you about 5 minutes to read. So I do recommend that you read it beforehand or after this section. And it won't take you that long. It's 5 minutes. Like, come on. But to shortly summarize Genesis 22 and the entire story that this book covers, it is the story of Abraham having to sacrifice Isaac. He wakes up one morning and God tells him that he has to sacrifice what was promised to him and his only seed to God. So he willingly takes him up the mountain, and as soon as he raises his hand to strike Isaac on the altar, he is stopped by an angel, and instead they sacrifice a lamb. And most of the time we would just breeze over this story, wouldn't think much about it. But Kierkegaard focuses on this idea of this absolutist faith, because the actions of Abraham denies all moral and rational justice. And that is his point, and what Kierkegaard is trying to tell us, that certain faith goes beyond our senses, it goes beyond our comprehension, our justification, our rationality, and the things that we would think of as ethical. Because if we think about it nowadays, if we were to be hit with, like, if a ball of light came up and told us to sacrifice our son, we'd have a lot of questions. And of course, it would be very irrational. But that is not what Kierkegaard is trying to say. He's trying to get us to understand that if you are going to go on the side of faith, like with this dichotomy of those two choices, that you're going to have to make the leap. And he says it's going to be very excruciating, because you're going to have to surrender your thought, your reason, your rationality. And to a lot it seems, at least to me, it seems like blind faith. But he says it's kind of beyond this. And we almost are to become someone like a knight of faith, someone like Abraham or Job. Now, this term leap of faith is not actually what Kierkegaard coined it as. He called it a quantitative leap. But the term leap of faith really connects his points well and really gets his point across. And this is someone, when they do this, they move beyond, as I said before, they move beyond reason. That's what Kierkegaard believes it is above. And it is almost a full conviction. It goes against what we understand logically. And this is why Abraham is seen as the father of faith. And it's fascinating to see this type of thought. Now, it is very difficult to get to this point, because I do have a lot of contentions against this. And I understand what he's saying. He believes that the path to God is through the self, and that faith is, he says, obviously it'd be absurd to your rationality because it transcends your rationality, and there's be no justification for it. To me, it just seems like this modern Job character of Kierkegaard has a couple of problems with his arguments. And I'll use example of Adam and Eve for this. So if we think of Adam and Eve, as Kierkegaard believes that you can't really have an interpretation of the Bible that is symbolic or, metaphorical. Like, you can agree that some of these are not, some of these are. He believes that all of these have to be an absolute truth, and you have to have your full conviction in the Bible. You have to have full faith in the Bible and what it says, and every word is the absolute truth. Now, if we take the example of Adam and Eve, we know through evidence that all of, animals, basically everything on the earth has evolved. Evolution, the theory of evolution. We can see the vast amount of evidence for evolution, and it's basically undeniable at this point. Now, if we take something like Adam and Eve, the story of Adam and Eve, it'd be very difficult to take this as a serious and literal account of the beginning of time. And there's a lot, you can contend it, but there is, if you really look at it, it is written very poetically in a sense, and there's a lot of metaphor in it. Like, was the tree of knowledge of good and evil? Was it really a tree? But there's just very nuancy. And to say that was the beginning of time, or that is how everything was created, goes against what we know with evolution. You can see it. You can see the bodies of evidence for it. I recommend you go and do that yourself if you are a creationist. But to use this point, you can see that we have all this body of evidence, but the Bible says otherwise. So what do you do in this sense? And this is an important question for this dichotomy of reason and faith. And the reason I bring this up is if you go to the faith side, in the back of your head, if you've studied all that, you kind of know that evolution is what happened, the theory of evolution. So how can you just look past this evidence? And the common answer that I've gotten the most is that God placed it there to test us. If that is such a thing, because that is really only the logical answer to that whole premise, is that we have this whole body of evidence, but the Bible says otherwise. So I suppose it was set as a trap or something of the sort to test us. But doesn't that constitute deception? Which would be lying. And of course, God cannot lie. But the Bible clearly states that Adam and Eve was where we begun. But that is not what our reason and rationality and our senses see with the mountainous evidence for evolution. This is the only part, and this is why I say that it's kind of blindly walking through faith. That's why I don't truly hold Kierkegaard. He's very interesting and he's very thing, but this concept of fully surrendering yourself, I don't see that as the best way to build your beliefs and structure your beliefs on certain things. Because at that point, how can you judge your own faith, whether it's right or wrong? I mean, I could put my faith in Thor and fully believe that, Norse mythology is fully true and that Odin created everything, but it wouldn't make it true. And the same with all the other religions. I mean, just because you put your faith in someone like Joseph Smith, if you're a Mormon, does it make him right? So that is the problem, at least for me, for faith. So obviously, I'm not an epistemist. I don't believe faith is like fully the most depraved thing or disgusting thing. But I do believe it's necessary in certain regards. But as far as formulating beliefs, reason, rationality, logic, at least to me, are the best way to form such things. If you disagree, that's fine. But let me know your arguments in the comments. And of course, I like to open up this discussion with all this stuff. So talk away. But anyway, that is the video for Fear and Trembling today. I'll probably cover more of it, but I just did want to get out here and talk a little bit and talk about this book and some of the things that I was thinking about within this book. And if you noticed, the editing will probably be a little bit better because I do have a MacBook now and also have a better mic. So video's quality will constantly be going up. And as I said in the intro, if you do believe in sharing good ideas and creating great ones and creating philosophical discussion between people, history, philosophy, doesn't matter what it is. If it's interesting to talk about, I want to share it, you want to share it, and we create a community around it. So if you believe in those goals, subscribe and tell me how I can improve on these videos or any feedback you have on certain structures or anything that I can do to improve these videos so I can share them throughout the world and get philosophy and interesting ideas back at the forefront of the internet. But if you made it this far, I appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.